My name is Liam, and I'm 38 now. Most people know me as a successful landscape designer in Seattle, a man who finds peace in shaping nature, creating order and beauty from chaos. I have a quiet life in a craftsman home on the Puget Sound, a loyal golden retriever named Cedar, and a network of close friends who know me simply as Liam. They see a person who is centered, thoughtful, and deeply connected to the natural world. What they don't see is the boy who, at 19, was cast out of a family that prized perfection above all else. They don't see the faint white line that traces the arc of my jaw, a permanent, physical reminder of a lie I had to endure to survive. This scar isn't just skin deep. It's a map of the silence I was forced to inhabit, a testament to the emotional surgery I underwent to excise myself from a life that wasn't truly mine. It whispers of sleepless nights, of a reflection that didn't always feel like my own, and of the constant, low-humming anxiety that only began to dissipate years after I left. The story I don't tell begins in the manicured suburbs of Dallas, Texas, the kind of place where every lawn was perfectly green, every house a testament to wealth and conformity. Our family, the Hendersons, was a public relations dream. My father, a powerful and charismatic partner at a prestigious law firm, was known for his impeccable judgment and unwavering principles that, I would later learn, were remarkably flexible when applied to his own family. My mother was the head of a major charity foundation, a woman of impeccable taste and grace, her life a carefully curated gallery of social triumphs, each event meticulously planned and executed to reflect the family's esteemed status. And then there was my younger sister, Chloe. She was the golden child, the rising star of the Dallas social scene, a national-level equestrian with a full scholarship to a top university, a future meticulously mapped out and funded by our parents' considerable resources. Chloe's life was a narrative of effortless victory, a story my parents proudly broadcasted to anyone who would listen. Each of her achievements a shining jewel in the family's crown. She was a whirlwind of energy and ambition, a girl who knew she was destined for a life of prestige and acclaim, her confidence radiating like a tangible force. I was the quiet one, the artist, the one who preferred to spend his time in the woods behind our house, sketching the intricate patterns of tree bark, the delicate veins of leaves, and dreaming of green spaces that felt wild and untamed, a stark contrast to the suffocating perfection of our suburban existence. I existed in her shadow, a necessary but silent part of the family's perfect portrait. A character whose lines were never meant to be heard, my presence a muted backdrop to Chloe's vibrant performance. I didn't mind the background. It was a safe place to be, a place where expectations were low and silence was a language I had mastered, a sanctuary where my own thoughts could take root and grow without the constant scrutiny of my parents' critical gaze. The night of the incident was a cool October evening, the air crisp, with the first hint of autumn, carrying the scent of decaying leaves and the promise of colder weather. Chloe, then 16 and brimming with the intoxicating freedom of a new driver's license, was behind the wheel of my father's brand new luxury sedan, a gleaming symbol of the family's affluence. She had a new license and a reckless streak that my parents always found charming, mistaking her audacity for strength, her impulsive decisions lauded as signs of a strong will. I was in the passenger seat, a reluctant chaperone. My father had been adamant that I accompany her on all her night drives, a form of silent supervision that made her resent me even more, my presence a constant reminder of their lack of complete trust. We were just a few miles from home, speeding through a winding two-lane road shrouded by the dense foliage of a forested area, the headlights cutting through the darkness when, without warning, a car coming the other way swerved erratically into our lane, its sudden appearance a jolt of pure adrenaline. Chloe, talking animatedly on her cell phone and completely distracted, her attention divided between the conversation and the road, panicked. Instead of braking a natural and instinctive reaction, she swerved hard to the right, clipping the oncoming car with a sickening crunch and sending us hurtling off the road and directly into the unforgiving trunk of a massive oak tree, the impact a violent, instantaneous halt to our momentum. The sound was deafening, a violent symphony of twisting metal, shattering glass, and the groaning protest of the tree as the car crumpled against it. The world spun in a dizzying vortex, and a sharp, hot pain exploded in my jaw as my head slammed with brutal force against the passenger side of the dashboard, the impact sending shockwaves through my skull. Then a profound, ringing silence descended, heavy and absolute, broken only by the sound of our labored breathing, ragged and uneven, and the ominous hissing of the car's mangled engine, a dying beast struggling for its last breath. Chloe was remarkably unhurt, emerging from the wreckage with a few superficial scratches on her arms and a broken cell phone, the screen spider-webbed into a useless mess. She looked at me, her face pale in the dim light filtering through the shattered windows, her eyes wide not with concern for my obvious injuries, but with a cold, calculated terror that sent a shiver down my spine. It was the fear of a perfect life coming undone, of a golden future tarnished before it had even begun, The carefully constructed narrative of her success threatened by this sudden, unforeseen disaster. She wasn't afraid for me. She was terrified for herself, for the consequences this accident would have on her meticulously planned life. "Liam," she whispered, her voice a low, frantic rasp, laced with a desperate urgency. "You have to tell them you were driving, please. Just this once. It's my scholarship, my future. You don't understand what this will do to me. It will ruin everything." I looked at her, truly looked at her, at the girl whose every action had been met with effusive praise, whose every mistake had been swiftly excused and swept under the gilded rug of our family's perfect image. I saw the crushing weight of my parents' impossibly high expectations bearing down on her, and in that stark, illuminated moment, I saw my own quiet irrelevance with crystal clarity. My future was a blank page, a vast, unwritten canvas upon which I was free to paint whatever life I chose, while hers was already a heavily detailed masterpiece in progress, a narrative she felt compelled to follow. I took the blame. "Okay," I said, the word a small broken whisper that vanished into the cool, crisp night air, carrying with it the last vestiges of my own voice. The lie was born not out of bravery, not even out of familial loyalty, but out of a desperate, quiet resignation, a final, silent act of devotion to a family that didn't truly see me, a sacrifice made in the hopes of preserving a facade that had always excluded me. When the first police cruiser arrived, its flashing lights painting the wrecked car and surrounding trees in stark, alternating hues of red and blue, I was the one who was questioned, my jaw throbbing with a relentless, agonizing pain. My voice trembling slightly but ultimately firm as I repeated the carefully rehearsed lie. I was the one who was taken to the emergency room, the fluorescent lights harsh against my pale skin, for a broken jaw that would require wiring shut and a concussion that would leave me with persistent headaches for months. My parents met me there, their faces etched not with relief or concern for my obvious pain and distress, but with a profound disappointment so cold and cutting it chilled me to the very core, their silent disapproval more lacerating than any harsh words. "What were you thinking, Liam?" my mother said, her voice a brittle whisper, tight with controlled anger, her hand clutching a delicate silk scarf at her neck, as if seeking some form of fragile support. "You could have ruined everything. Do you have any idea how much that car cost? It was a gift from your father's senior partners, and what this could have done to Chloe's equestrian career? The Nationals are in 6 weeks." My father just looked at me, his eyes filled with a sad, silent anger that was far more painful and isolating than any yelling or physical punishment, a look that conveyed not just disappointment, but a profound sense of betrayal. The lie became the new truth, etched into the official police report and whispered in concerned tones among our social circle. The narrative was simple and easily digestible. Chloe was the unfortunate passenger, the blameless victim of a careless older brother's recklessness, and I was the irresponsible one who had nearly destroyed the family's prized possession and, by extension, their perfect daughter's meticulously planned future. They never once questioned the story I gave, never once looked beneath the surface of my carefully constructed account, never once asked me if I was truly okay or what had really happened that night on the winding road. My version of events was the one they desperately wanted to believe, the one that preserved their carefully crafted image, and so it was the one they readily accepted, no further questions asked. The years that followed were a quiet torture, a slow erosion of my already fragile sense of self. Chloe never thanked me for taking the blame, never offered a word of apology for the pain I endured, both physical and emotional. She simply went back to being Chloe, the golden girl, her reputation untarnished, her path to success unimpeded. She left for Stanford a month later with a full scholarship and a future that sparkled with promise, her departure a silent, almost imperceptible lifting of a weight in our household. I stayed behind, a ghost in my own home, my wired jaw a constant physical reminder of the lie I had swallowed. My final year of high school was a muted haze, a landscape of silent hallways and solitary lunches, my already tenuous friendships fading away as I retreated further into the solitary comfort of books and sketch pads, finding solace in the fictional worlds and the tangible reality of my artwork. The faint, white line that traced the healing fracture of my jaw was a constant, subtle reminder of the night I had chosen to disappear, a physical representation of the heavy secret I carried, a brand marking me as the one who had almost shattered their perfect facade. The old family photos on the mantelpiece, once a source of quiet discomfort, now seemed to mock me, each carefully posed smile telling a story where I was the silent, smiling shadow, the one who didn't quite belong, a peripheral figure in their brightly lit lives. There was a constant, low-level tension in the house, a quiet accusation that seemed to emanate from the very walls, a palpable discomfort that hovered in the air whenever I entered a room. I was no longer a son, not in any meaningful sense. I was a living reminder of a mistake, a flaw in their otherwise perfect family portrait, a silent testament to the price of their ambition. The silence in our house was a language they spoke fluently, a language of unspoken expectations and subtle judgments, and I, having had years to study its nuances, was fluent in it as well. It was a language of unspoken rules, of subtle dismissals, of being constantly told in a variety of veiled ways that I was too sensitive, too quiet, too artistic to truly be a part of their real, important world, a world of achievements and accolades that seemed forever beyond my reach. I saved every dollar from my after-school job at a local nursery, carefully tucking the meager earnings into a worn leather wallet, each dollar a step closer to my eventual escape, my silent rebellion. I applied to colleges far away, meticulously researching programs in cities where the name Henderson would carry no weight, where no one would know the carefully constructed narrative of my family's perfection. I chose a landscape architecture program at the University of Washington in Seattle, a city nestled amidst towering evergreens and shrouded in a comforting anonymity, a vast and anonymous landscape that felt like a safe harbor, a place where I could finally shed the weight of expectation. The day I left Dallas, a sweltering August afternoon, my parents gave me a perfunctory hug, a brief, almost clinical embrace, and a few cursory words about being careful, their eyes already drifting towards the next item on their meticulously planned agenda. Chloe, home for the summer between her rigorous equestrian training, just offered a curt nod from the breakfast table, her attention already consumed by her phone, her existence a million miles away from mine, our paths diverging without a trace of shared emotion. I never looked back at the sprawling house, at the perfectly manicured lawn, at the life that had never truly felt like mine. I changed my phone number before my plane even landed in Seattle, blocked their email addresses with a decisive click, and for the first time in my life, I started breathing on my own, the cool, Pacific Northwest air filling my lungs with a sense of liberation I had never known. I worked tirelessly, juggling part-time jobs with my demanding studies, found my true passion in shaping the natural world, and began to heal in a city that knew nothing of the quiet, broken boy I had once been. My golden retriever, Cedar, whom I adopted from a local shelter, was my constant companion, my shadow and my anchor, a creature who had also experienced abandonment and taught me, through his unwavering loyalty and gentle nudges, what it meant to trust and be truly loved again. We understood each other in the profound silence of shared experience. His quiet presence was the only therapy I ever truly needed. My world became one of blueprints and design software, of creating vibrant, living spaces that were both beautiful and functional, a stark and deeply satisfying contrast to the sterile, emotionally barren home I had left behind. My work was an act of rebuilding, a conscious effort to construct something solid and true out of the wreckage of my past, a testament to my own resilience and the enduring power of nature. 19 years passed with a quiet, almost imperceptible momentum, like a silent river carrying me further and further away from the jagged edges of my past. I excelled in my field, my passion and dedication, leading to a partnership in a prestigious landscape design firm renowned for its innovative and sustainable projects. My designs, characterized by their sleek lines and harmonious integration with the natural environment, were featured in prominent architectural magazines, my name becoming a byword for a kind of quiet, understated elegance and a deep respect for the land. My life in Seattle was stable, warm, and authentically mine, filled with the quiet satisfaction of meaningful work and the genuine companionship of friends who valued me for who I was, not for who my family was. The past became a distant echo, a faded photograph tucked away in a forgotten album, a memory I had carefully boxed up and stored in a dusty corner of my mind, a ghost I had learned to live with, its presence more a faint whisper than a haunting scream. Then, a month ago, on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday afternoon, the insistent ringing of my phone shattered the quiet rhythm of my workday. The number displayed was blocked, an unwelcome intrusion into my carefully guarded privacy. Hesitantly, I answered, and the robotic voice informed me of a new voicemail. With a growing sense of unease, I listened to the message. It was my mother's voice, undeniably hers, older, the sharp edges softened by time, or perhaps a hint of vulnerability, yet still carrying that familiar undertone of quiet desperation. "Liam," she began, the sound of my name on her lips like a rusty key attempting to unlock a long dormant lock. "It's your mother. Chloe needs to talk to you. It's urgent, Liam. It's a matter of national importance. It's about the accident all those years ago. Please call us back. This is about family." A cold dread washed over me as I deleted the message, the familiar knot of old anxiety tightening in the pit of my stomach, a visceral reaction to the mere sound of her voice. I ignored the subsequent calls that came in rapid succession, the increasingly frantic emails that filled my inbox with their insistent pleas, a persistent and unsettling invasion of the peaceful life I had so carefully cultivated. I wasn't that frightened, voiceless boy anymore. I was a man who had learned to survive by building walls and decisively cutting ties with the source of my deepest pain. But the calls kept coming, each unanswered ring a silent testament to my resolve. Finally, a text message arrived from an unknown number, a stark white bubble on my phone screen. It was from a man named Adam, a campaign manager for my sister. Liam, this is Adam. Chloe needs your help urgently. She's running for Congress, and a story from her past is threatening to break. Political opponents have dug up details about the old car accident. Please, Liam, we need your cooperation. Running for Congress. The words hit me with the force of a physical blow, a wave of disbelief and a bitter sense of irony washing over me. Of course, she was. The golden girl continuing her seemingly effortless ascent towards greater heights of power and prestige, her path always smoothed by the sacrifices of others. The woman who had built her polished image on a foundation of lies, a foundation I had unwittingly helped to construct. I did a quick search online, my fingers flying across the keyboard, a morbid curiosity driving my actions. The headlines were everywhere, splashed across news sites and political blogs. Rising star Chloe Henderson facing scrutiny over youthful recklessness. Congressional candidate's past car accident resurfaces. Political opponent digs up old accident report. A grainy, low-resolution photo from what appeared to be an old police report was circulating online, a stark black and white image of my father's wrecked luxury sedan, its crumpled front end a visceral reminder of that long-ago night. The accompanying stories, carefully crafted and disseminated by her campaign, painted a picture of a tragic, but ultimately minor, incident. Chloe had been a passenger in the vehicle, and her older brother, reckless and inexperienced, had been behind the wheel. A youthful indiscretion, the narrative implied, nothing more. But a determined political opponent had evidently dug deeper, unearthing inconsistencies in the official police report, whispers and rumors of a witness who had seen Chloe emerge from the driver's side in the immediate aftermath of the crash. The carefully constructed lie, the cornerstone of Chloe's entire public persona and her carefully managed image, was threatening to unravel, exposing the hypocrisy that lay beneath. They wanted me to reaffirm the lie, to step back into the role of the reckless older brother and publicly stand by the false statement I had given 19 years ago. They needed me to be the ghost they had always wanted me to be, a silent, convenient fiction, a shadowy figure who would validate their carefully constructed narrative and ultimately save Chloe's rapidly imploding political future. For a fleeting moment, a fierce, old anger, dormant for so long, flared up inside me, a hot, bright flame igniting in the quiet corners of my soul. I could hang up, delete the emails, ignore the texts. I could let the carefully constructed lie crumble into dust, watch their perfectly manicured world finally fall apart, piece by agonizing piece. But then, as the initial surge of anger subsided, I saw a different kind of opportunity emerging from the wreckage of their desperation. I had a chance, not just to passively witness the unraveling of their deception, but to actively dismantle it. I had a chance to not just expose a lie, but to finally, after all these long silent years, to tell my own truth, to reclaim the narrative that had been stolen from me. I was no longer the quiet, invisible boy who would silently take the fall to protect his sister's golden future. I was a man, an architect of my own life, someone who understood the power of structure and design. And I was about to carefully construct a new narrative, one they wouldn't see coming, a story built on the unshakable foundation of truth. I replied to the campaign manager's text message, my fingers flying across the screen with a newfound sense of purpose. I'll call you back tomorrow. I wrote, my words concise and deliberate, but I won't agree to anything without speaking to Chloe first, in person, alone. He responded almost instantly, his desperation a palpable thing, even through the cold anonymity of text. The next day, without a word to anyone, I booked a flight back to Dallas, the city I had vowed never to return to. I didn't tell my parents I was coming. I didn't tell Chloe. I wanted to see the look on their faces, the precise moment their carefully constructed reality began to fracture. When I, the man they had tried so hard to erase, walked back into their lives, no longer a ghost, but a tangible presence holding the undeniable key to their carefully guarded future. The meeting was a carefully choreographed disaster, a tense and uncomfortable gathering held not in the familiar, suffocating perfection of their home, but in a sterile, impersonal private conference room at a prestigious law firm in downtown Dallas, a neutral ground chosen, no doubt, to minimize any potential public spectacle. Chloe was there, impeccably dressed in a tailored black pantsuit that exuded an air of professional confidence, her face a carefully constructed mask of composure, betraying none of the panic I knew must be simmering beneath the surface. My parents sat beside her, flanking her like anxious sentinels, their expressions a fragile mix of forced calm and thinly veiled panic, their usual polished demeanor noticeably frayed around the edges. When I walked into the room, the silence felt thick and heavy, charged with years of unspoken words and unresolved resentments. My mother gasped, a small choke sound that seemed to escape her almost involuntarily. Liam, she said, my name a hesitant question on her lips, as if she were indeed seeing a ghost. A figure she had long relegated to the shadows of her memory. My father merely stared, his expression unreadable, his eyes narrowed in a way I remembered all too well, a silent testament to the long and painful years we hadn't spoken, the chasm between us seemingly unbridgeable. Chloe stood up, her hand extended in a gesture that felt rehearsed and insincere. Liam, thank you for coming. Her voice was practiced, smooth and polished, the voice of a seasoned politician, a far cry from the panicked whisper I remembered from that night in the woods, the voice of a woman who had perfected the art of convincing people of whatever she wanted them to believe, regardless of the truth. I didn't take her hand. I simply sat down in the chair opposite them, my hands folded calmly on the polished surface of the table, a silent observer in their carefully staged and deeply flawed play. The silence in the room stretched, thick and suffocating, heavy with the weight of 19 years of unspoken words, of buried resentments and unresolved pain. What do you want, Liam? I asked, my voice calm and steady, betraying none of the turbulent emotions swirling within me. My father cleared his throat, a nervous, almost involuntary gesture. We need you to make a public statement, he began, his voice tight, his gaze fixed on some unseen point beyond my shoulder. To the press, to unequivocally put this old business to bed, once and for all. My mother nodded emphatically, her eyes darting between Chloe and me, a desperate plea etched in their depths. It was a long time ago, Liam, she interjected, her voice softer than my father's, but laced with an unmistakable urgency. A youthful indiscretion. Just say you were a reckless teenager. It will all go away. The words, so carelessly spoken, stung with a familiar sting, a potent cocktail of dismissal and blame. Reckless. Irresponsible. The same tired accusations they had leveled at me all those years ago, conveniently ignoring their own complicity in the events. I'm not a teenager anymore, I said, my voice dangerously low, the quiet menace in my tone a stark contrast to the frantic energy in theirs. And the only reckless one that night was your daughter, who was driving erratically while engaged in a phone conversation. The carefully constructed masks finally shattered, revealing the raw fear and simmering anger beneath. My mother's face contorted in a flash of undisguised fury, her eyes narrowing into hard, accusing slits. Don't you dare, she hissed, her voice a low, venomous whisper that belied her usual polished demeanor. She was only 16. It was a mistake, Liam, a childish error in judgment. A mistake, I repeated, a small, bitter laugh escaping my lips, the sound devoid of any real humor. A mistake that nearly killed me, a mistake that left me with a broken jaw and a concussion, and a lie that I had been forced to live with, a shadow hanging over me for 19 long years. I looked directly at Chloe, at the woman who had built her entire career, her carefully crafted public image, on a foundation of a lie she had allowed me to carry, a lie that had defined my life for nearly 2 decades. You never once apologized, Chloe. Not to me, not to anyone. And now you stand here expecting me to lie again, to perpetuate this charade, just to save your precious, perfect life? Chloe's practiced calm finally cracked, a hairline fracture appearing in her carefully composed facade. Liam, what do you want? She asked, her voice sharp with impatience, her carefully maintained composure beginning to fray. Money? Is that what this is all about? We'll give you whatever you want. Just name your price. The offer, so casually delivered, was a familiar insult, a classic tool of their dismissal, their ingrained belief that every problem could be solved with a financial transaction. I don't want your money, I said, my voice firm and unwavering, my gaze locked on hers. I want you to tell the truth. That's all I've ever wanted. She scoffed, a dismissive sound that echoed in the tense silence of the room. And ruin my entire life? My career? My family? Just to make yourself feel better? Is that really what this is about? My father stood up abruptly, his face flushed with a sudden surge of rage, his hands clenched into tight fists on the table. You will not do this, Liam, he said, his voice booming with authority. You will not destroy your sister's career. She has a family now, a future to consider. We protected you, Liam. We shielded you from the worst of the consequences. You should be grateful for that. The old lie, so familiar and so deeply ingrained in their perception of reality, was revisited, offered up as some kind of twisted justification for their actions. They hadn't protected me. They had abandoned me to the consequences of their own ambition. You didn't protect me, I said, my voice quiet but filled with a steely resolve, my gaze sweeping from my father to Chloe, then back again. You used me. You let me take the blame because it was convenient, because it preserved the carefully constructed image you so desperately cling to. And you never, not once in 19 years, said I'm sorry. Not even a simple thank you for the burden I carried. You just let me fade away, hoping I would disappear completely. Well, I'm not fading away anymore. I'm standing right here. I stood up, pushing my chair back with a loud, decisive scrape against the polished floor, the sound echoing in the suddenly charged atmosphere. I'll make a statement, I said, my voice ringing with a newfound strength. But it will be the truth. And if you think I'm going to ruin Chloe's career, you're wrong. She's perfectly capable of ruining it all on her own. I turned and walked towards the door, leaving them in the stunned and suffocating silence of the conference room, their carefully orchestrated meeting dissolving into a chaotic mess of fear and recrimination. I didn't look back, didn't offer a parting word. I wasn't just Liam anymore, the quiet, invisible boy who had always faded into the background. I was someone else now, someone stronger, someone who had finally found his voice. I was a force of nature, and I was about to unleash a storm they had never anticipated. I didn't rush to the press with my story. I was a landscape designer after all. I built things with careful consideration, piece by painstaking piece, with precision and a well-thought-out plan. My first move was to track down Mr. Harrison, the now retired police officer who had responded to the scene of the accident all those years ago. I looked him up online, the digital breadcrumbs leading me to a small, unassuming town in Arizona. I picked up the phone and dialed his number, my heart pounding with a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. The sound of his voice, older but still carrying a hint of the authority I remembered, brought a lump to my throat. I told him everything, the words tumbling out in a rush after years of enforced silence. I recounted the accident, the lie I was forced to tell, the subsequent years of silence and emotional isolation, the faint, white scar on my jaw that served as a constant reminder. I told him about Chloe's burgeoning political career and the desperate pressure from my family to perpetuate the lie. He listened patiently, his voice unwavering on the other end of the line. "I always had my doubts about that report, son," he said finally, his voice tinged with a hint of regret. "The damage to the vehicles, the way you were holding your jaw, it never quite added up. I always figured there was more to the story. I always knew you were a good kid, Liam. Quiet maybe, but a good kid. A quiet hero in a way." His words were a soothing balm to the deep wounds I had carried for so long, the first real validation I had received in 19 years. I asked him if he would be willing to give a statement to a journalist, should one come calling. Without a moment's hesitation, he said yes. Next on my list was Samuel Johnson, the construction worker who had witnessed the accident from the other vehicle. The original police report had mentioned him briefly, noting his presence at the scene. The private investigator I hired, a discreet and efficient man named Ben, managed to locate him in a matter of days, also retired, and living in a small town in Arizona, it seemed. Ben arranged a phone call, and I found myself speaking to a man whose memory of that night was surprisingly vivid. "I saw the whole darn thing," he rasped, his voice weathered by time and sun. "That girl, the younger one, she was on her phone, clear as day, swerved right into my lane. The fella in the passenger seat, he looked hurt. She was standing there, yelling at him right after it happened." I told the officer what I saw, but he just scribbled it down and never followed up. Didn't want to cause no trouble for a prominent family, I reckon. He admitted he hadn't wanted to get involved, hadn't wanted to cause trouble for a seemingly well-connected family. I asked him if he would be willing to speak to a journalist to finally set the record straight after all these years. He hesitated for a moment, a thoughtful pause, then said, "For the boy who took the fall all those years ago? Yeah, I reckon it's about time someone told the honest-to-goodness truth." With these crucial pieces of the puzzle in place, I reached out to Clara Vance, a respected investigative reporter whose work on political corruption I had long admired. I sent her a concise, carefully worded email outlining the situation. "I have information regarding a car accident in the past of congressional candidate Chloe Henderson," I wrote. "Details in the official record are not accurate, and I have a witness who can corroborate the true events." Her response was swift, arriving in my inbox within the hour. We arranged to meet at a quiet, unassuming cafe in Seattle, far from the political buzz of Dallas, and I laid out the entire story for her, from the moment of the accident to the present-day political implications. I showed her the original police report, the faded hospital records documenting my broken jaw, and the recent, desperate emails from Chloe's campaign manager. I provided her with the contact information for Mr. Harrison and Mr. Johnson, and I told her, with a sense of calm determination, that I was ready to go on the record, to finally speak my truth to the world. Clara was a seasoned professional, her questions sharp and insightful. She didn't rush the process, meticulously fact-checking every detail of my account. She flew to Arizona, interviewing both Mr. Harrison and Mr. Johnson, recording their sworn statements. She delved into the original police records, uncovering the inconsistencies I had mentioned, the discrepancies that had been conveniently overlooked. She even managed to uncover the campaign's quiet, behind-the-scenes efforts to suppress any resurfacing of the old story, their attempts to bury the truth. The story that began with a teenage car accident had morphed into something much larger, something with significant political ramifications. It was a story about a pattern of deception, about a family willing to sacrifice one child to protect the ambitions of the other. It was about a woman who had built her career on a foundation of lies and a powerful political machine willing to perpetuate that deception for their own gain. The article was published online on a Thursday morning, the headline stark and undeniably devastating: "The Ghost in the Machine, the car accident that launched a political career." It was a bombshell, its impact immediate and far-reaching. It meticulously detailed the events of the accident, the lie I had been forced to tell as a frightened teenager, the subsequent years of silence and emotional exile, and the recent, desperate attempts by my family to coerce me into perpetuating their deception. It quoted Mr. Harrison, his words carrying the weight of authority and regret, validating my account and speaking to my quiet resilience. It quoted Mr. Johnson, the unassuming construction worker, who after 19 long years finally recounted the truth he had witnessed. And it quoted me, Liam Henderson, the brother who had been effectively erased from the family narrative, the ghost who had finally decided to speak, his voice resonating with the quiet power of undeniable truth. The fallout was immediate and spectacular, a digital wildfire spreading across news outlets and social media platforms. My phone, which had remained stubbornly silent for so many years, suddenly sprang to life, buzzing and vibrating with a relentless barrage of calls and messages. Not from my family, who remained conspicuously silent, but from old acquaintances, from long-lost friends and classmates from my high school days in Dallas. I had no idea, Liam, they wrote, their messages filled with shock and a palpable sense of regret. I'm so incredibly sorry. The major news channels picked up the story, the narrative quickly gaining national attention, and suddenly my face, my name, was everywhere, plastered across screens and scrolling across news tickers. The carefully burnished reputation of the Golden Girl, Chloe Henderson, was crumbling in real time, her political aspirations hanging precariously in the balance. My parents' meticulously constructed world, built on a foundation of secrets and carefully curated appearances, was visibly collapsing around them, the cracks in their perfect facade widening with each passing hour. I didn't watch the news coverage. I didn't seek out the online commentary or engage in any form of gloating. I simply sat in the quiet solitude of my home in Seattle with cedar nestled at my feet, watching the steady rhythm of the rain outside, a profound sense of peace settling over me. I hadn't sought revenge. My motivations were never rooted in malice. I had simply sought justice, a long-delayed reckoning with the truth, and in the quiet sanctuary of my own life, I had finally found it. A week later, amidst the ongoing media storm, I received an email that stood out from the rest. It wasn't from a long-lost friend or a curious journalist. It was from Chloe's husband, David, a man I had never met but whose name I had seen mentioned in various articles. His email was surprisingly direct and emotionally raw. Liam, it began, the subject line simply reading, "After the article. I read what you shared. At first, honestly, I didn't want to believe it. It seemed so unbelievable. But then I talked to Chloe, and all she kept saying was, it's complicated. That's when I knew. Complicated is what you say when you don't want to admit you've been living a lie. I'm leaving her, Liam, and I'm taking the kids with me. Thank you. Thank you for telling the truth. You gave me the courage to finally see what was right in front of me, the inconsistencies I had tried so hard to ignore." That message, arriving unexpectedly in the sterile environment of my inbox, carried more weight, more profound satisfaction than any public vindication. I had not only exposed the lie that had haunted me for so long, but I had also prevented it from poisoning another family, another generation. 2 days after David's email, a letter arrived in the mail, the familiar loopy handwriting instantly recognizable. It was from my mother. The handwriting was shakier than I remembered, the ink bleeding slightly on the page, but the tone was unmistakably hers. "How could you do this, Liam?" she wrote, the words filled with a familiar blend of accusation and wounded pride. "How could you inflict such pain on your own family? We gave you a good life, Liam. We raised you. And this is how you repay us? With this public humiliation, your father is beside himself with worry. Chloe's career is in tatters, her campaign a complete disaster. We have lost everything because of your selfish actions."